Welcome to the Friday Happy Hour with victory strategist, award-winning author and your happy hour host, Annmarie Kelly. Each week, Annmarie chats with women who have reinvented, started over or wrote fabulous next chapters. They share how they overcame their midlife challenges and how you can too. So kick back with some good happy hour something to drink and enjoy today's show.
All of my friends tell me that I'm a good girl, yes they do. They all see me as being so perfect, little Miss Goody Two-Shoes. If I do something a little risque, they all gasp and I just say, good.
Hi and welcome. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour with me, Annmarie Kelly. I'm that recovering good girl and your midlife mentor. This is where us victory chicks and you men who care about us meet on Friday afternoon to figure out how to navigate the twists and turns of this interesting time of our lives and get empowered so our midlife time can sparkle. Thanks for joining me for Happy Hour today, and I'm glad you're here. We're wrapping up the month with two guests at Happy Hour today. Both of them are in exciting new chapters of their lives. They both have very rich histories and came to their second careers in interesting ways. Journalist and author Kay Presto has been with us before, and actually she was here during Women's History Month, I think it was 2 years ago, because she was one of the first women to cover motorsports, like NASCAR. And actually for Kay, what she's doing now is more or less an extension of her interest in motorsports and car racing. And she took all that experience and made a children's novel out of it, using go-karting as the backdrop. And it's the kind of thing you can do, too, with your past experiences, whether it's tennis or golf or needlepoint even. So that's why I asked her to join us today, because she has a good story and I think she'll inspire you. And then, sort of continuing with the sports theme, I invited photographer Gerry Monteux to join us. I met Gerry last summer in Ellsworth, Maine, when I was on vacation. Now, I don't know him in his former career, but if you're a big sports fan, you might know him from when he was anchoring sports for NBC under the name of Bill Patrick. Well, a couple years ago, Gerry got one of those, it's not you, we're just going in a different direction lines from his bosses. And then he had to deal with the what's next question. So many of you will relate to his story. And what he's doing in his second career is following his bliss and doing it in his real name, Gerry Monteux. So both Kay and Gerry will be here with us today. So listen, Victory Chicks, we're wrapping up Women's History Month. And when I talk to younger women, they often have no idea what went on during the first and second waves of feminism. And some of us, we were really young if we were even born during that first wave. But so they know that the younger women know that terminology, the first wave and the second wave and the third wave, but they have no connection to it. In fact, I spoke to one young woman earlier this year, and when she talked about the third wave of feminism, she sort of rolled her eyes and brushed her hand with it, like at the reference. It's such an interesting shift between generations. A couple of years ago, I met feminist icon Gloria Steinem at the Book Expo in New York City. Her book, My Life on the Road, was new, and I was one of the women standing in a very long line to get the book signed. And I experienced that dichotomy between generations. It was very interesting because standing in front of me was a woman who I would guess was in her 20s. She was interested in Gloria Steinem as a historical figure, somebody she was supposed to know as an important woman. But, it could have been George Washington for all she cared. She would have been just as excited. Not for all she cared, but for the level of excitement she had. If it would have been George Washington, Gloria Steinem, that, it was all the same to her. Historical figures. And then there was me, who, from a feminist standpoint, I know that Gloria Steinem was one of the early people of feminism, so that was interesting for me. Excuse me. And then standing in line behind me was a woman who, I'm guessing, was probably mid-70s. And she was there with her girlfriends, and they were all abuzz at the idea of meeting Gloria Steinem. You would have thought they were meeting the Pope or Queen Elizabeth or Michelle Obama. They could not have been more excited to meet the one woman who, for them, changed everything. So I've been thinking about those things this month, like how this time 100 years ago, Susan B. Anthony was fighting for that right to vote, for women's rights and that right to vote, and she won. Women were soon not only voting, but getting elected to public office, paving the way for Hillary Clinton, who ran as the first woman ever seriously considered to be the president. And she paved the way for people like Kellyanne Conway, the first woman to ever successfully run a presidential campaign. You know, when you think about that, and then you think back to 1964, when, you're going to find this hard to believe, I know. It was hard for me to believe when I read it. But in 1964, Milton Bradley, the game people, sold a game called Pillow Fight. I'm wondering if any of you ever had it. The game was designed to, I think this might be a quote, provide young girls with an acceptable, ladylike way for them to vet their spirited energy. Because, you know, in polite society, a respectable woman was discouraged and dissuaded from being either aggressive or dominant. God forbid in 1964 you should speak out or do anything like that. Do anything that wasn't ladylike. You know, back then all over the world, women were bombarded with messages that their only value was in their beauty, charm, and their ability to cook a good meal. And wealthier parents gave their daughters lavish coming out parties. You know, and back then, coming out didn't mean saying that you were gay or straight or gay, but it meant showcasing their daughters and announcing that they were available for marriage. And they sent their daughters to finishing schools. I actually have a girlfriend who went to a finishing school, and I know a woman who had a coming out party. And she was telling me that. I said, well, like, what? Now you're going to be able to know that I didn't have one. They didn't even exist by the time I came around. But she was, and, excuse me, I said, so what color dress did you wear? She sort of rolled her eyes and did a tisk and said, white. You always wore white. And her dress was white with a blue sash. Well, anyway, those wealthier parents sent their daughters to finishing schools and colleges, not for an education, but just so they could find an upwardly mobile man to marry, get their MRS, and be financially taken care of. And that attitude still exists in some countries. Then compare that to like Serena or Vanessa Williams, or the women in any of the STEM professions, you know, science, technology, engineering, or math, or any of our brave women soldiers who, along with their military brothers, are fighting to keep us and our freedom safe. And then think about some of the early non-political feminists, like tennis legend Billie Jean King, who, at the top of her field, challenged male counterpart Bobby Riggs to a tennis match. And it was so publicized in the 70s, the battle of the sexes. But it had a startling impact on 1970s society, not only in America, but around the world, mostly because it got everybody talking seriously about gender equality. And meanwhile, Janet Guthrie's passion for racing was making stunning front-page news as the first woman to compete in the Indy 500 and the Daytona 500. The two top race car competitions, and they had previously been all male. Well, she paved the way for other women racers like Danica Patrick. You know, the list could go on and on. And women today stand on the shoulders of women like them, and other women will stand on our shoulders. So I guess it's good that we have strong ones, huh? And I'll include Kay Presto in that too. And speaking of, Kay Presto and Gerry Monteux are here, and they're both fun and fascinating. So go get some good happy hour something to drink, and we'll be back first with Kay Presto. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour. When you wished you had more time for yourself, and now you have it, but you notice you're keeping busy with stuff, but that stuff isn't making you feel happy or filled up? And when you think about what would make you happy and filled up, you get stuck or feel overwhelmed. And then you go back to what's more familiar, more comfortable, even if it's not making you happy. Wouldn't you love to find a way to start making sense of that deep discontent you're feeling? Well, you're not alone. I'm Annmarie Kelly, author, victory strategist, and the radio show host of the Friday Happy Hour. And I know there's a place for you, one that other women have found to be both inspirational and empowering. And it's the Victorious Woman Project. Go there now and get on my mailing list, where you'll be the first to know about my upcoming online workshops, teleseminars, and more. And while you're there, take a couple minutes to look over my blog. You can download some of the free stuff I have for you and let it get your creative juices going. I'm looking forward to meeting you at the Victorious Woman Project. And that's at www.victoriouswoman.com. Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm Annmarie Kelly, and we're here with the fabulous Kay Presto. Greetings, Kay.
Greetings to you, Annmarie. How is everything with you today?
Everything's perking along, and Kay, I'm telling you, you're the Energizer Bunny. You just keep going and going. And some of my listeners might remember you from a past happy hour. But, you know, for those who don't, or for those who are new, and since you know, Kay, we're wrapping up Women's History Month, let's talk a little bit more about your history. Because you are kind of a glass ceiling breaker in what you did. You covered motorsports of all types for 4 decades. In fact, you started doing that before women were really accepted into motorsports, into any kind of sports journalism. So tell my listeners what you did and how did you get accepted in that world, because you did.
Well, I kind of went into it backwards, Annmarie. The sports editor asked me to write. I was at the racetrack with my daughter, who was the race queen. I was taking photos of her. As a favor to her, I had just quit to write a book to help working women, which I never did get written. And the sports editor came by, saw me taking notes, because I knew zero about auto racing. And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm trying to learn something about the racing before the race occurs." And he said, "Write it for the paper and I'll pay you." And I said, "I know nothing about racing." And he said, "It's okay, write it for the paper and I'll pay you." And so for some reason I said, okay. And then I scared myself to death because I thought, what have I just done? I don't know anything about it. So the first article I wrote was about the blind kids who came to the track that day, and they could hear it, smell the fuel, feel the vibrations, and all of that. So I interviewed their supervisors and wrote that up and gave it to Jim, and he put it in the paper. And then the next day I thought, what do I write about now? And so I wrote about my daughter's hectic schedule as race queen, because she was in and out and working and trying to do everything they wanted her to do. And she'd call and say, "Mom, get my stuff ready. I'll be in the door in a minute. I have to go cut a ribbon somewhere, blah, blah, blah." So I wrote about that. And then the third day I thought, I'm out of ideas. What do I write about? So I bought myself a little, not a little, a big tape recorder. They didn't have the little ones then. And I had the media pass by then. And so I went into the garages scared to death. I thought they're going to throw me out because they know I don't know. So I walked up to this race driver and I said, "I'm Kay Presto and I'm writing about racing for the Daily Report, but I know nothing about racing." And it was Al Unser Sr. who won at the Indianapolis 500, and God bless him, he understood my problem and gave me enough information I could write my first real racing article. And I kind of took off from there and just kept asking questions and learning as I went, and strictly fell in love with the whole sport.
And as I recall, getting that press pass was not an easy thing for you.
it wasn't the press pass that was a problem. It was the garage pass with NASCAR.
Oh, that's right. Right.
The women were already allowed. They had fought the battle at Indy. I don't know who took care of that, but it was the NASCAR garage pass. They kept saying you can't interview the drivers, and even the wife of NASCAR's founder was not allowed in the garages at that time. And so I just kept writing my articles, and one time I did a 3-part article about the flagging system. Talked to the flagman, he was great. Talked to the drivers, they were great. And then I said I need to talk to the NASCAR officials because they're the ones who really call which flags are thrown. And so I had to go up, get permission to go up in the tower and talk to the head NASCAR official, which they finally let me do. And I published the article, and the next time I went to the track to pick up my credentials, they said, don't forget your garage pass. And I almost fell down in shock. So I don't know if that article was what did it or what, but from then on, women were allowed in the NASCAR garages. So
interesting. I love that story. I know I've heard it a couple of times, and every time you tell it, I love it. I think that was a really neat thing to do.
Well, it wasn't that I did it to get a garage pass. I did it because I wanted to write an interesting story for the readers because the flagging system is very complex. And so I was getting all, and the flagman was terrific. He just gave me all kinds of stuff. So I got a lot of cooperation. The NASCAR officials were the ones that really, and the Indy 500 officials for a while. When I first started taking photos in the pits, I believe I was the first woman photographer in the pits at Indy, from what I'm told, and they did not want me there. So they keep saying, you're getting overheated. Go out and sit down and shake. Go inside. Go inside. And they kept chasing me out of the pits, and then I'd go inside for 10 minutes and come back out and do my photography. Mm-hmm. So it was just a matter of working my way through all the things and gradually getting over the problems.
And being persistent.
Oh, and always, I never fought with them. I always went along with it and worked my way through somehow.
I know, and you mentioned Alan, sir, and you met Dale Earnhardt.
I only met Dale Earnhardt once, and he refused to sign the checkered flag I bought when he won. So I had not much experience with Dale Earnhardt Sr. at all.
And who else have you met?
Oh, I've met Richard Petty. Richard Petty is great because I used to have to do 10 minutes with Richard for Mutual, and he'd tease me. He'd say, go interview my cousin. He sounds just like me. And I'd laugh, and I'd say, Richard, but there's only one king, and you're it. And he'd say, okay, come on. And then he'd give me a great interview. And, Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, Janet Guthrie. Janet, to me, is one of the prime women in racing. There's the one that really broke a lot of barriers down and did well in IndyCar and in NASCAR. Brilliant woman.
I did an article.
Build her own car engines.
Oh, yes. She was like so obsessed with and passionate about racing, and she put up with a lot of crap being a woman at that time.
She put up with the worst, I think, of anybody. And I had a very long interview with her, about 2 hours we talked, and boy, but she did it with such dignity and grace. Mm-hmm. She didn't get nasty. She didn't get mean. She just worked, there again, she worked her way through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I read her autobiography, and then I wrote an article about her, and I was really impressed with her. And
I'm glad you read her autobiography because it was terrific, wasn't it?
It was terrific, yeah.
Yeah.
It was good. So it was a man who gave it to me, and he said, I think you might enjoy reading about her because he knew I did Victorious Woman, and he was absolutely right. And I tried to get in touch with her, but I wasn't able to do that. But just writing the article from the book and the research I did was just it made me impress her.
So I've met the greatest of the great all through. It's been a privilege, and they've all been pretty wonderful. I hit a few little bumpy roads with a couple of them, but we eventually got over that and made friends. And so I've been just going on through for this will be my 46th year, and I haven't slowed down yet because I love the sport. So, and I love everything about it. The television that I did, the radio broadcasting I've done, the photography, the writing. I've even done PR for a couple of race teams at their request. And so I've seen it from every side there is, and that's what's more exciting because there's so much. And I've done technical stories. I love the technical stuff, and I don't think there's any part of it I haven't touched, really.
Including now, Kay, when you called me a couple months ago to talk about your new book, Chasing the Checkered Flag, I was blown away. And the first thing I thought of, does this woman ever stop? Because
I haven't learned yet.
No, do you mind telling my listeners how old you are?
Pardon?
Do you mind telling my listeners how old you are?
I always say I'm perpetually 39, and I welcome every new day in my life.
There you go.
Yeah, and that never changes.
You are as busy as another woman, the woman who introduced me to you, Robbie Motter, and the two of you are, not only are you busy, you're still engaged and you're still creating new things, and I just love that.
Mm-hmm. And it's a good way to live, really.
Mm-hmm.
I wake up every day saying, hey, God, thank you for another day. Let me do it in the best possible way. And then I just go on from there and do whatever I need to do. And I'm very blessed in that way. And writing the book came as a really interesting thing. I was originally approached by an agent. I approached her. She said a publisher was looking for someone to write a go-karting book for kids. And I had written racing books before, but not a novel. And so I walked up to her and I said, I'm your person. Well, of course, I don't look anything like a racing reporter in person. I look very feminine and all of that. So she looked at me like, well, yeah, and I said, let me send you some information. So I did, and she said, oh, wonderful. Well, then I wrote 3 spec chapters, and I went out and I did I had done some go-karting with some of the race drivers, just for fun, but then I went out to a go-karting track and got in and really, really ripped around the throw laps, wrote the 3 spec chapters, went and interviewed some kids for that at one of the go-kart tracks, and then she moved to New York. And all of a sudden the publisher was gone, and I never did find out what happened. We had not got to a contract stage yet. So I had it started, and I thought, okay, I'll just keep plugging with it, and I kept writing it and writing it. And I had gone out and interviewed the officials and interviewed the kids and interviewed go-kart builders to learn the technical aspects of it, and went from there and just kept working at it till I got it finished.
You know what I love about that, Kay? And it was one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you to the Friday Happy Hour, is that you're really passionate about race cars and that whole realm. But I know that I have so many listeners who are mothers and grandmothers, and they have a passion for a particular hobby. In your case, it's motorsports, and for them it might be tennis or golf or needlepoint. I was visited a historic home not too long ago, and the former owner was a needlepoint artist. I'd never heard of that before, but what she did was truly artwork and pretty neat stuff. And then I know a woman who's a serious collector of fans. She's collected fans from all over the world. And so I was thinking, you took that thing that was your passion and you turned it
into a business.
Yeah, you built it into a business, and now with the Chasing the Checkered Flag, this book is a way to pass on what you know about race cars and life, and pass it along to children, your grandchildren.
And, my son read it. I've been getting marvelous reviews about it. One woman bought it for her 10-year-old son. She said he does not like to read at all. She said he was so into this book. She said he loved it, and she said, thank you so much for writing a book that my son would enjoy. And my own son, who has run his own business for many years, does not. He's an amateur racer. He loves to go out and do it on weekends as a hobby. But he sat down and he said, Mom, I hate to read. But he said, I never put it down. He said, I read the whole thing in one day. Well, it's about a 2.5-hour read. But it pulls you through from start to finish, because the way I wrote it, I wanted to make it a page-turner. I like books
it's a
where
mystery.
You can't put it down, because you want to go down you can't lay it down. You say, I have to go into the next chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the mysteries are in there. There are 3 different mysteries and some other things that pop up that you don't expect. It pretty weaves through a lot of twists and turns and keeps the reader reading. But what fascinates me too is I'm finding that grown-ups are buying it for themselves.
And see, sometimes we think if it's a children's book, then only children will read it. But a lot of times, especially if it's an easy read, then it's something, and it's, if it's well written and it's an easy read, then, we adults like that too.
Oh, yeah, and that's why I try to make it that way, but I wasn't expecting this welcoming from the adult crowd. I was at a book signing, this man was buying it, and I said, who do you want it autographed to? He said, to me, it's for myself. I said, now you realize it is a book for children. He said, I don't care. It looks really interesting. I want to buy it for me. And that's what I'm getting. Half of my sales are to grown-ups so far. It's just amazing.
Kay, your lead character is a 12-year-old. His name's Ryan Edwards, and he has a 9-year-old buddy, Timmy, and a neighbor who helps him. Her name's Maria. And then we had to have a dog in there. That's Sparkplug. So I'm curious.
Kids love Sparkplug.
Yeah. How did you come up with the characters? Did you model them after anybody you know?
I didn't. I interviewed so many kids in go-karting, and they were all so exciting about being in the sport that it kind of evolved into a Ryan Edwards. It's not modeled after, he's not any particular person I know. He's just
Like not one of your kids when they were 12?
No, not at all. My son, when he was 10, was already building go-karts, but he never entered into the picture. I just kind of formulated it from a lot of the responses from a lot of the different kids, and there are girls in it, and so it's girls and boys, and the girls are into go-karting as much as the boys are, and that is so it's a balance. And then of course we have the mysterious Joe Yoshida, who is a go-karter, and
he's the one to look out for.
Yep. And so, so they just, the mysteries kind of wrote themselves as I was writing the book. I don't know why. As I'd be writing along, all of a sudden I think, let's go this way on this, And it just kind of built itself little by little from what I was working with. I will say that the kids were wonderful in what they gave me. And, of course, the people, the officials, and the go-kart builders, they were all so helpful. And then I studied the rule book. So I went very in-depth into the sport when I wrote it. That's why it took me longer than I planned. But the only thing was the dialogue for the kids. One publisher looked at it and said, you made Ryan too vanilla. He's too soft. So I had to redo him in the way he spoke. And I said, okay, I'll make him tougher. I won't make him swear. I won't make him vulgar. And so I would go to this junior high school, and with permission from the teacher after class, I'd ask the kids, I'd say, okay, now if somebody said this to you or did this to you, how would you respond? And so I got some of the dialogue there. That was the sticking point, was getting the dialogue. So it was a fun book to write. It took a long time, but I really, really enjoyed it when it got finished.
And now, let me ask you this question. Did you set aside a special time to write?
Never. No, I write morning, noon, night. Sometimes in the middle of the night, if I can't sleep, I'll get up and write. So I have no, like 5 to 6 in the morning or this or that. I write whenever I can fit it in, and that's the way I've always worked. And, of course, if I have a deadline, I'm writing on deadline. And I gave myself this particular deadline for the book, because I think it helps when you have a deadline. But no, I don't have any writing schedule at all.
And did you, now for me, I've had several deadlines, but when I seriously got to writing this book that I'm finishing up now, I got accountability partners, people who would ask me. I was with somebody yesterday, and she said, okay, so where are you with the book? How much do you have left to do? And that always puts a little bug in my bonnet to move it along. Yeah. Well,
I think, too, what helped my writing is that I belonged to a very wonderful writers group, and we would critique each other's writing. And there was one woman in particular, Paula, who taught kids. So she was around kids, and she'd say, well, why don't you change this phrase just a little bit here and there? She gave me some small pointers, but I thought they were very valuable.
And writers groups are really good. For my listeners, that there's two things that I think that you want to get. One is you want to belong to a writers group where you can actually go and read your work, and the other is to have people who will read your work not in the writers group and just give you feedback about, like like I have readers doing my book now, and they say, well, I think maybe here, or maybe you didn't answer this question. Mm-hmm. So to have people from outside who will give you that kind of feedback, and people you trust.
Yeah. Well, the writers group gave me very minor changes, but I felt they were valuable. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty much an independent writer. I'm self-taught. I've never had a professional training in anything I do. I just jump in and do it and learn as I go.
It's the truth, Kay. You always amaze me.
Yeah, and I always worked harder that way until I learned. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a wonderful way to work for me anyway. Now, it might be a terrible way for another writer, but the writers groups are excellent. And then I was very fortunate in having Alexander Rossi provide the foreword for this book.
I know, I saw that, and Kay, we're running out of time, but he's so handsome. He's 25 years old, and he's so handsome.
Well, see, I covered that race that he won. I was there. And so I wrote to his PR gal and said, would Alexander be willing to read the manuscript and provide a foreword? Well, a week later, I got the foreword, and I was absolutely swept away with the magnificent foreword he provided. So what I did in the book, the young man and his father takes him to Indy. He takes Ryan to Indy as a birthday gift for his 13th birthday, and they see a race. Well, I rewrote the entire thing to that is the race that Alexander won. So that chapter is not fiction. It's fact. The rest of the book is fiction, but I rewrote it because it was so exciting and so remarkable how he won that race and the excitement that there was there that year. There were 350,000 people, and I was down on the track before the race started, so I had all the excitement. It was like one big party. And so I just wrote that into the book, and it works.
Yeah, it does work. Kay, we need to go, but it was such fun to have you join us for the Friday Happy Hour. And, of course, I always love talking with you. And I'm glad you could share your latest victory with my listeners. So thanks. Thank you so much for coming.
And they can get the book in Kindle or paperback on Amazon.com.
And there's a link to that book on the radio wrap-up for today's show.
Well, wonderful. And it was so great talking to you. And I look forward to you finishing your book and getting it up. I'm eager to hear about it.
Thanks, Kay. I'll talk to you. I'll give you a call next month.
Sounds great. Thanks so much.
And we're going to go away for a couple minutes, and when we come back, photographer Gerry Monteux will be joining us, and you're listening to the Friday Happy Hour. Hi, this is Annmarie Kelly, author, victory strategist, and the radio show host of the Friday Happy Hour. I trust you're enjoying my conversation with this fabulous, victorious woman. If you're getting inspired with ideas and feeling empowered, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's more for you. Tips, downloads, resources at the Victorious Woman Project. Go to victoriouswoman.com and look around and get on my mailing list so you can be the first to know about the newest good things I have for you. That's www.victoriouswoman.com. We're back at the Friday Happy Hour. I'm Annmarie Kelly, and we have Gerry Monteux with us. Hi, Gerry. How are things in Down East Maine?
Things in Down East Maine are phenomenally beautiful. And by the way, congratulations on pronouncing my last name correctly. You're one of about 12 people in the world that can do that. Well done.
Thank you very much. You gave me good lessons, and I was a good student.
Yes, you were. Now, things are great here. It is cold. We're expecting a foot of snow tomorrow, but you know what? I couldn't be happier.
Well, even in the snow days, it's beautiful in Down East Maine.
Oh, there's no question about it.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons I moved back here is that I really enjoy four seasons, and we get four seasons here, believe me.
Yeah, you do. It's Gerry, when we met last summer, I was in your studio in Ellsworth, Maine, and that's how I know you. But some of my listeners might know you from your first career as a sports anchor at NBC, and not as Gerry Monteux, but as Bill Patrick. How long did you were you a sports anchor?
Well, I was a sports anchor for nearly 40 years. That's 40 years, yeah.
But you're still cute, Gerry. But you're still cute.
It's astounding to me too. I mean, I'm not even 40 years old. That's the weird part. Yeah, almost 40 years. Started at on the network level. I started at ESPN, and I was a typical broadcasting nomad, and moved from there to USA Network to eventually winding up at NBC Sports. And I was, how do I put this ceremoniously, let go 3.5 years ago and decided to move back to Maine.
And so, a lot of us have had that experience of being, getting the, it's not you, it's we're going in a different direction line.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
and which is what happened. But you called it something I hadn't heard before. You called it the 2020.
Yeah, it's basically in broadcasting, it's 20 for 20. And it wasn't really that extreme for me. 20 for 20 means you can hire a 20-year-old and give him $20,000 to take your job. It wasn't quite that bad, but the principle's the same. I mean, they hired a kid who was about half my age. He was like 28 years old, and paid him half what I was getting paid. Now, I can't prove that I was aged out of the job. If I could, I'd be a very rich man right now, but...
Yeah.
But I
so would a lot of people, Gerry.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. Yeah, so it was the 20 for 20 formula came into effect here.
Yeah. So, but let me ask you this while you were still doing that, what were some of your favorite things that you did? Because you did, I was reading, because you're on Wikipedia and everything, and I was just reading about Bill Patrick, and Bill Patrick did a ton of very cool things.
Yeah, he did. He sure did. I think, oh boy, it's tough to narrow it down. I was able to cover the Tour de France one year, and when I say cover it, I mean every day I was in a different French town or village, or in that case it was Germany, Switzerland, and France. So for a solid month I got to tour those countries. I was working, of course, but what an experience that was. And then one year they sent me to New Zealand to cover the America's Cup, and that was phenomenal. Things like that. You
got to travel a lot?
Well, I used to travel a hell of a lot. And I did all the 4 major sports, the team sports, and I did golf and things like that. But I think what really stands out for me, the high points are when I was able to travel abroad and spend some serious time in foreign countries. That was wonderful.
Because you get to know the people.
It wasn't always a bed of roses, but that was a great time.
Yeah, because then you really get to know the people and you get to really feel the culture.
Absolutely, and you're working with people there in TV. You all have something in common, and that's television. What you don't have in common is culture. And so you're working side by side with people who can teach you a thing or two about where they're from, and that was just awesome. And a lifetime of memories and a lifetime of friendships, too.
And that's, to me, when I travel, that's always the best part, because as you know from when I was talking to you, I get to start a conversation, and if it's somebody like you that I can have a good conversation with, then I want to, I want to take that a little further. I want to know a little bit more about you than just that little snippet that, because I want to get to know you as a person, like that.
Sure, absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. And you and I probably share the same trait, and that is a natural born curiosity. I'm incredibly curious, and I want to learn. And there's only one way to learn, and that is to get out and do it. Get outside. Get off your couch. Get off your butt and get out there and meet people and start conversations and so forth. And that was the good part of broadcasting for me.
Well, I wanted to ask you this question. When it happened to me that I got it's not you, and in my case the company was being sold, but I know, Gerry, that for me when I got laid off, and my job had been very stressful. I ran a corporate university, and when that was over, I slept for a month. I just slept. In fact, I would get exhausted from just making my breakfast, and I'd need to lie down and take a little nap. How was it for you? Like that first aftermath? Everybody does it a little bit differently. How did you do it?
Well, for me, I'm going to be honest with you. It took me a long time to get over the bitterness. I was incredibly bitter. I wasn't as depressed as a lot of people would be in that situation, but I was furious. And I had incredibly evil thoughts about the guy who did what he did, to me what he did. You can just imagine. It took me a long time to get over that. But then I realized that, you know what, certain things do happen for a reason. I was incredibly miserable the last several years. When I went to NBC, I realized what a corporation it was, what a business it was. It wasn't fun. It was simply a bunch of suits making decisions based on what they thought was the right way to go about doing business. And it's not necessarily it wasn't even close to what I would do if I were making decisions, because they wouldn't take the people into account. They wouldn't take personalities and families into account. It was simply corporate decision making. So I was miserable the last several years of my career. And as my ex-wife pointed out, she said, you know what, they did you a favor because you wanted out. Deep down inside, you wanted out. And she was right. I wanted to get out, but I wanted to do it on my own terms.
Yeah.
Well, they just kind of
they sort of helped you along.
The process up a little bit.
Yeah.
So there, I was shown the door and tried to find another job in TV. I didn't, to be honest with you, didn't try very hard. I just decided that this was a sign from the universe that I needed to get back and do something that would make me happy. Finally, I took a huge cut in pay. I was making about 10% of what I was making when I was in TV, if that. But I tell you what, it took me a few years, but I'm over it. I'm over the bitterness, and I am as happy as I could possibly be right now.
And you know, I could tell that from talking to you last summer, Gerry, that you're back in Maine where you were born and raised. You went to college in Orono, and now you are back to your roots. Do you still have family there?
I do. I have a sister who lives in a group home. She's intellectually handicapped, and I take care of her. She's my ward. I am her. She's my older sister, but I'm her guardian. I have a brother who lives downstate here in Maine with his wife. My parents are both gone, but what's left of the family is basically here in Maine. Well,
you know, Maine to me is like my second home. So in fact, I didn't realize it till last summer when we were driving down we left Ellsworth and we were driving towards Bar Harbor, and all of a sudden I felt like I was going home. So I love the state where you live.
Yeah, it gets in your blood.
It does get in your blood.
It really does. I mean, people complain about the winters up here, but it's not. It's about 5 degrees colder than Boston. You know, it's really not that bad. What you do have to do in the wintertime is realize that there are going to be a lot of long, cold, lonely nights, and if you're equipped to deal with that, then there's no place better on earth as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I'm guessing that one of the things you do to keep yourself busy in the wintertime is your artwork. And, you know, Gerry, I've seen your work. I think it's amazing. And I love your scenic work. In fact, some of your favorite work, my favorites of your work, are your sunsets. And since I'm not there in the wintertime, you take some really lovely pictures of the snow, and you have one on your website, which is the link is on victoriouswoman.com. And it's a picture of ice on trees, and that's any place I go, that's one of my favorite shots, because it's, you know, ice on trees lasts seconds. You have to really capture that right away.
It's true. It's true. And one of my favorite things is to watch the forecast, and if there's an ice storm or a major snowstorm moving through, and if I can see by the forecast that it's going to be sunny and clear the next day, then I can't wait to get out there and shoot, because that's my favorite thing. It's very tough to capture ice and snow and make it look pretty and inviting and interesting. And those shots are very, very infrequent, believe me. It's not easy to get them. It's not easy to make them look good. But I have hopefully done that in a couple of cases.
Yeah.
So thanks. Thank you.
I think you have, so I like them. What kind of camera do you use?
I'm a Nikon guy.
Okay.
Yep. Always have been.
Now, I personally like your scenic pictures, but my spouse Joseph loves your wildlife, and it's not that I don't love them, because I think you have done some of the most interesting shots of wildlife that I think I've ever seen. And when we talked last summer, and it's the reason I wanted to introduce you to my listeners, I was bowled over by your dedication. You know, you're in the woods at crazy hours to get some of those shots.
Yeah.
How do you decide what to shoot and when?
Well, here's the thing, Annmarie. What you have to do as a wildlife photographer is you have to pick a place based on what you know about the place. So, for instance, if I'm interested in photographing moose, which I always am, I will find a place. I'll do the research. I'll call people. I'll find out how often they see moose in this one particular area, and then I will simply go there and wait. I'll hike to wherever I need to go, and I'll sit there and I will wait for the moose to come to me. Now, I know enough about the subject that I'm shooting to know what time of day I need to be there, how long I need to wait, etc. So you have to know, first of all, you have to have the time, you have to have the place, and you have to know enough about the animal's behavior to not waste your time. So there's a lot goes into it. But what I like to do is capture the persona, if I can use that word when it comes to animals, capture the animal's persona, its personality, and that's not easy to do because that takes a great deal of time. I can go out there and I can get a photograph of a moose, but if it's just like every other picture of a moose that you can see online, that does nothing for me, and it does nothing for the viewers or my potential customers. I want to get an animal doing something that you don't normally see. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I got to make it different.
And you do.
That's what I try to do.
And you do, Gerry, because you're absolutely right. You really do catch a personality. When I was looking at those pictures and I looked into the eyes of some of those animals, they were looking at me. I was having I had a connection.
Yeah. You know what? This is going to sound really, really whacked, but there are times when I think I'm Dr. Doolittle. Because I swear there are times when I'm out there and the animals just come to me and they do things that you don't normally see. They'll stare at me. We have moments, and I wind up capturing a lot of those.
Mm. Do you usually go out by yourself?
Oh yeah. This is a solitary profession. Unless you're with another photographer who thinks exactly the way you do, but I would much rather just be by myself. Yeah.
But now I've done that a couple of times with Joseph and I, even just hiking in Acadia, which I always presume is relatively safe. But one never knows. But I've been in Canada hiking, and I remember one time walking and thinking, there's nobody around, and I'm not sure we should be here by ourselves. For the safety reason of it. And do you ever get nervous?
No. Not really.
You've never felt in danger with a bear or a moose or like a snake?
Nope. I honestly have never, well, especially around moose. I mean, moose they're so docile. And I've never come that close to a bear, with one exception. That was a polar bear that I was about 3 inches away from. But I wasn't scared then either. I'd been drinking whiskey. Don't tell anybody. So it didn't really scare me that much. That's a true story. But anyway, no, I've never really been scared out in the woods or anything like that. I'm more fascinated than anything else, to be honest with you.
Do you have like a favorite animal in the woods story?
Favorite animal in the woods? Well, yes. I will tell you this one. It's a moose. First moose I ever photographed. This was about 10 years ago. And I was out at my buddy's camp. This is up in northern Maine, way up in the Willywags. I mean, no electricity, no running water, just a camp. And I was out walking my dog at right after daybreak, and I heard this tremendous noise out in the woods. This was in October. This was during the moose rut, the moose mating season. I heard this tremendous noise out in the woods, and out of the woods came two bull moose, and they had been fighting. They came out to investigate us, and the big one, the biggest moose I have ever seen in my life, came right up to me. This is the first time I'd ever photographed a moose. And he came up to within about 15 feet of me, maybe 12 feet away, cocking his head the way they do because they have terrible eyesight. They can smell you, but they don't know what you are. Came up to within about, 12, 15 feet away and just stopped, cocked his head, and stared at me. Now, if I knew about moose back then what I know now, I probably should have been a little nervous. But I wasn't. It was more like a religious experience.
Wow.
And he sat there, I stood there, and I took 24 shots, and then he just turned around and walked back into the woods. And
he showed up for his photo shoot and left.
Yeah, it was like, I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille. Would you like the left side or the right side?
Oh, that's good.
It was just an amazing thing.
Well, that's a pretty neat story, Gerry.
Yeah, and it's things like that make you realize that you're doing what you're meant to do.
Yeah, when there's that synchronicity.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a connection. You have to have a connection, and that's as close to a religious experience as I've ever had.
Well, Gerry, with so many of my guests, and you're one of them, the time just goes so fast, and we're going to have to wrap up. But this was fun, and you have a special discount for my listeners.
Yes, indeed. Anybody who goes onto my website, which is Monteux, Monteux Gallery, MonteuxGallery.com. How about 25% off anything that you order through the website? Just simply contact me. Go to the contact page. Let me know what you want. We'll work something out.
That's awesome. Gerry, that's great, and I'm going to go and do that myself because I was on there earlier today and I saw a sunset picture that I just absolutely have to have. So if for my listeners, if you're not interested in the wildlife, just don't miss the sunsets and some of those great scenery shots that Gerry takes. And Gerry, you find when I come up next summer, you're going to have to show me, literally show me where some of those places are because I want to go to them.
I will be more than happy to do that, but I will tell you right now, it means getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning if you want the sunrise, and it means staying out until about 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night if you want the sunset. If you're willing to commit to that, Annmarie, I'm your man.
Okay, well, the sunset part is good.
Happy to help.
Oh, Gerry, that's good. I'm glad you came to the Friday Happy Hour. Thanks, and have a great weekend.
Thank you, and enjoy shoveling.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, my good listeners, you Victory Chicks and you guys, we're taking a short break, and I'll be back to say goodbye. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour. Are you one of those women who lived the first part of your life as a really good girl? That is, you did all the right things and followed all the so-called rules for women? I was like that too. But have you noticed that once you passed 40, you have less patience for those rules? Maybe you even think that the rules really don't make sense for you anymore. Maybe they never did and you just didn't realize it. Do you want to go where other recovering good girls meet to inspire each other and support their new empowered selves? Then join me, Annmarie Kelly, and some very fabulous victorious women. We're on Facebook at the Victorious Woman Project. So go to facebook.com/Victorious Woman Project. I'll talk to you there. Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. Before we go today, I wanted to remind you that Girlfriend Gala is just 2 months from now, and we're cooking up another fun night for the girlfriends. We have a good time at the gala, and I'm excited that this year's speaker is Jen Kroneberger. Some of you might know her from Donna Saul's show on Tuesday afternoons, and she's coming to Happy Hour in May. I love Jen's view of life, and maybe that's because she echoes some of my same values and views. She, like so many of us, faced our demons and came out on top. So she has a good message for the girlfriends this year. And doing our comedy is Mary Fran Bontempo. And you might remember she was here a couple months ago on that Happy Hour. She was the guest who wrote Not Ready for Granny Panties and The Woman's Book of Dirty Words. Now, if you missed her, or you want to hear my interview with her, once again, you can get it on Victory Chicks Radio, and that link is on today's radio wrap-up. If you want to join me this year for Girlfriend Gala, I'd love it. It's May 24th, 5:30 to 9, at Penn Oaks Golf Club. And you can get tickets at the early bird rate still. But listen, we sold out last year, and we have a lot of people were disappointed, so don't wait. And speaking of Victory Chicks Radio, if you've been posting I've been posting podcasts the past happy hours on YouTube, and no, you can't watch me, but YouTube makes it easier for you to listen to the podcast. My cousin Miriam was listening, and when I showed her how to do it, she's like, "Oh, this is really great." So you just have to click. You go to the link, you find the one you want, and you click. So Google Victory Chicks Radio or go to the radio wrap-up, and you get that link. Okay, I'm leaving you with a quote from Arlene Dahl, the B-movie actress who wrote a stunningly anti-feminism book in 1965 called Always Ask a Man. It's a pink think classic, and here's one reason why. She gave women this warning. This is really think about 1965. She said, "If you don't give a man a chance to look after you, he'll soon give up and let you look after yourself." I don't know about you, Victory Chicks, but that sounds pretty good to me, that looking after myself thing. How about you? Thanks for joining me at Happy Hour today. Come back next week. Jen's on.
Thanks for listening to this Friday Happy Hour. Make sure you subscribe, rate and review today's show. And join us again next week for the Friday Happy Hour with Annmarie Kelly.